Morning, everyone. Can you hear me all right over there? Okay, it works. Awesome. We are at a Retail Technology Conference. I think everyone here is interested in figuring out how they can deploy technology for a better outcome for their businesses. And I thought one of the things that usually tends to get a little forgotten is once you have the tech, what are you going to do with it? And that's really where my kind of little attention-seeking conversation is going to be about. I'll spend some quick 10 odd minutes on trying to bring light to how you have to think about technology as a subject in terms of how you deploy it. Anne, could you please move us to the next slide? This has been oft said, oft quoted. All of us have heard this, seen this, talked about this in multiple fashions. As I am here, I can see one gentleman on the phone, probably a couple more doing whatever else they need to do, which is going to take their attention away. Unless I keep this highly engaging, highly exciting, which is extremely hard, I'm not going to be able to retain the attention of the entire audience. 2 timing, 3 timing, 4 timing is a habit of the consumers today. Yeah. So the only way you drive attention is if I have to name this gentleman and put a spotlight on him and get his attention is why he will end up coming back to the moment. And the only way you can do this at scale, given that the digital marketing ecosystem is the way it is to deploy personalization at scale using the right kind of marketing technology. Now, whether it's something you can still postpone for a little later, or would you rather do this upfront and ASAP, it's about making sure that you are not leaving money on the table on one side and also not losing market share on the other side, because your competitors are probably moving faster along these lines. So if you are sitting on a pile of data, not deploying it well enough, sending across irrelevant communication to your consumers, likelihood is you're going to lose market share. And that's where the whole thought process of a growth loop, that if you have a better conversion cycle with better content, you will end up making the same dollar go a longer way for yourselves. And that's what can help you gain market share. And eventually it's a growth loop, right? But imagine the other way of doing this. And imagine that to be a degrowth loop, where you're getting poorer and poorer in ROI on your spends. You're not leveraging data well enough. So you're losing some of that extra leverage that you could have gotten. Your competitors are doing a better job, so they're gaining market share out of it. And in effect, that could over a longer period of time become a death spiral, right? So I mean, structurally, when you have a long-term way of building a company, the only way to do this is with data-driven power. While I know you guys will use your cell phones whether I want it or not, I thought I might as well ask you to do it. So please, take out your cell phone, join this conversation, and you can either scan the QR code if it works for you, or just type in a little number over there. It's 1261816. And we'll have a couple of quick polls. Is everyone done yet? Maybe we can move to the results. So the first question that's being asked to the audience is, in simple sense, when you talk about the whole subject of user engagement, and there are, let's say, different stakeholders within a large organization that get involved, in your case, in your organization, who's the one in the driving seat? I have only 5 responses, so maybe I'll wait for a little more before jumping to a conclusion. But seems like marketers are in the driving seat, and that's being acknowledged. So I just hope it's not biased because this room is full of marketers. But the fact is, if you are in the driving seat, then the onus and responsibility of making sure you're doing the best job here also lies with marketers, right? I don't know if we'll get to statistical significance, but so far it seems to be clearly dominating. All right, fair enough. I think we have a reasonable conclusion and confidence on this. Yeah, moving on. And you're the marketer, you're in the driving seat, you're the one who's supposed to run charter. How do you feel about the whole confidence with this whole technology and the deployment and where you are at this point? I kind of anticipated the marketers to be the answer. We've done this before elsewhere, so we know how the audience typically responds. But let's see how this one plays out. There's not a single person who can claim it to be back of their palm, right? That's at least being fairly honest in my impression, if not being modest. Some people are probably being a little modest. They could have said familiar, but they're saying figuring out, but sure. But that's kind of where it's the most dominant. But what's very evident and very clear is the whole subject of Martech is very, very early in terms of its maturity, in terms of its talent supply that's available in the industry. So from a leadership lens as well, it's not something you can take super, super easily for granted to say that, okay, I know exactly what it's going to take and how to do it, right? And it's not the buyer's problem alone, it's also a problem for the seller's side. I think, Anand, we can move on. And I think I have this screenshot which I'll move to. Next slide again. This is about 10,000 odd tools. This number is gone to 10,000 as I know, because I've yet to update this slide from the latest. But this is how the Martech ecosystem looks like today. So in terms of deciding what to choose and how to put it to use, and when there's 20 salespeople chasing you and trying to tell you that this is my tool's going to change your life, it is a bit of an overwhelming situation for most marketers, especially the ones which have spent the last 10, 15, 20 odd years building amazing consumer brands, and who are suddenly who need to be talking the language of marketing, the language of data, the language of technology, and it's unfamiliar territory. And they want to depend on agencies and consulting companies who have their own, let's say, limitations, strengths, as well as agendas. I won't be biased for or against them, but as a marketer, you need to be able to trust who and where do you go in terms of making these decisions. And that's where one of the topics we really talk about a lot at WebEngage ends up being about education. And if there is one thing that I want marketers to remember when they're trying to do the whole technology shopping kind of play, is don't expect technology to make strategy for you. The part that you need to deliver from technology in terms of the end outcome is the first thing you need to decide before you start, talking to vendors, before you start making your, conversations, pitches and everything. Because other than that, if you end up working the other way around, that, you look at the cheapest tool available and then you figure out it doesn't have all the features that you need. And then you also figure out that, okay, my team that is currently employed with me doesn't necessarily know how to use this tool. So this whole thing will fall apart. And I've seen enough very large deployments fall apart for similar reasons, where the choice of the tool probably came before the choice of strategy or the overall implementation plan came, right? And that's where, as a company and as a strategist, if you're taking this decision and you want to be educated and slightly, let's say, deliberate about these choices, I definitely encourage you to think it the other way around. That, okay, you solve for your ROI and strategy, or rather not even ROI, you solve for your strategy and the business impact you're trying to make. Make sure your team knows the how of making all of these outcomes happen. And then you get into whether the platform is capable. Because what will otherwise happen is you will start comparing platforms on a large checklist of features, 80% of which you will never end up using. And that's where you'll probably go for the tool that's seeming to be like, 10 features for X price, which is how you buy maybe a ticket for an entertainment park wherein you have 10 rides for X rupees instead of 20 rides for Y rupees. But that's not how you buy a Martech stack. So just be very mindful of those choices in terms of which tool would serve your needs the best when it comes to deploying the use cases you have in mind. Yeah. And this is my favorite slide because what typically ends up happening, and I was hoping there'll be a slightly more non-serious reaction to this. People still seem to be kind of seriously watching this. But the fact is, you're buying a jet plane and you're driving like an auto rickshaw is the reality of how a lot of Martech is currently being deployed. Unfortunately, remains true even today, even as we try to do whatever initiatives we do in terms of education. Because somewhere or other, the mindset and the lens of the decision maker, the guy in the driving seat, the marketer, has to be where he needs to be more outcome oriented. I need to know if I know how to fly the jet, if I were to really buy one. Yeah. And what we would love for it to happen as a mainstream topic across pretty much every brand, every piece of communication that goes out, can that be personalized? Most of you have the data stack to make it happen. Are you really doing a good job at this? Maybe you aspire to, maybe you're there somewhere through the journey, but are you there yet? And are you at least trying to be there yet? The other thing which I feel most people tend to have an uncertain stance on is the fact that there's one big campaign or one big idea or one big thing that will change the world for me. Now, in the world of celebrity brand endorsements and mass market television and all of that, we had a fairly highly reinforced set of brands like Vico, Vajra and Theo Parachute that were created. One massive campaign in the year, and that'll drive demand for them throughout the year. And one failure like that could also be very expensive. Today, when you look at the digital data-driven kind of plays, that's not how the world operates. You have a lot of little things that you will do, which will ultimately have a compounding effect on your business. It doesn't make sense to look at one large impact that, okay, if I'm going to buy this set of tools or this Martech, it will change life for me. It will not, right? And let's just be real about it. Let's be practical about it. The part that I've still seen a lot of people miss out on is you tend to do segmentation and personalization to a certain extent in your communications. But if I am a 5-time customer versus I'm a first-time customer, my website experience or my mobile app experience still remains the same, which is kind of odd because there's enough technology now available to make sure those experiences get personalized as well. The other piece is I had the transaction happening X days ago, and now I'm trying to do some sort of a response to it Y days later, which is weird because you practically have the ability to intervene in real time. If I'm on the website and if I'm spending 5 minutes on that pair of expensive shoes and I'm a loyal customer, it's probably okay to give me a real-time nudge that, here's this little extra pair of socks for all I care, or an early access to the new arrivals in the next season for you to do this in the next 30 minutes. So all of these real-time interventions can genuinely aid and actually make a meaningful difference to your conversions, because the amount of money you're spending on performance marketing to get that traffic is quite crazy. So it makes sense to intervene in real time rather than wait for the person once he's already gone and trying to recover that abandoned cart. Yeah. All right. So I think what you'd want to optimize for essentially is to be able to get your initial time to value very quickly. The word I heard my dear friend Basujit speak, which is speaking in the room, was the word around minimum viable proposition. So how do you incrementally show value, demonstrate value, demand greater investment from the management teams, because they are going to be, let's say, very cautious about expanding spends without seeing ROI. And that's where you don't necessarily look at a large, huge leap one fine day, but you look at ongoing expansion and continuous improvement as a cycle loop. And to that, I think the last slide I would have is the whole compounding effect, that there's no single silver bullet. If you do a good job consistently, and it's not just a matter of 1 year, it would take a multi-year cycle to mature some of these practices. When we look at some of our very sophisticated customers, they're running hundreds and hundreds of journeys. And each of these journeys tend to get very optimized to the nth level of depth because they've been at it and they've been optimizing them. The only other way people have done this is, one blast email and second blast email and third blast email. And hopefully that world will become a thing of the past. Hopefully all of the retailers and the marketers in this room tend to get better with their communication. Thank you so much. That's kind of all. So I do have 4 minutes left, which means if there is anybody who has questions, feel free.